All right, so we're going to be talking about agentic document extraction today. A little bit about me. I've worn a lot of different hats over my career, spent some time in management consulting, leading data science teams in technology sales. I'm entirely self-taught as a data scientist and machine learning engineer. I originally studied chemistry, and my hobbies are tennis and board games. So if you're ever in the Pacific Northwest and are up for some tennis or board games, definitely look me up. So here's what we're going to cover today. We'll do a product overview. So what is agentic document extraction? We'll go over some core use cases by industry, but really, I think you're going to see fits in many industries beyond just the ones I'm going to show. We'll do an orientation to our visual playground and go through a variety of different examples. So things that we would consider core use cases like invoices, but also some more difficult examples. We'll do some multilingual, we'll do some archival and handwritten, and you'll really get a sense for the diversity of document types we can support. Then we'll talk about user support. So where do you access our documentation? How do you get connected to our Discord community? How do you access information about privacy and our trust center? And then we'll switch over to doing things more programmatically. So fundamentally, agentic document extraction is an API service. So we'll do an orientation to the API, both the REST API and the Python package. We'll look at some inputs and outputs, and we'll do a couple of demonstrations. So I'm going to be moving at quite a rapid clip. I'm just going to give you a preview of the two demonstrations that we'll be doing. So the first one deals with user-supplied financial documents. So imagine that you're applying for a loan, you have to provide proof of income, proof of account balances. And so the receiving organization now has all of these different scans and PDFs and uploads. They actually need to extract structured information from all of the files you've uploaded. So we're going to do that programmatically and turn these four documents into this nice kind of extracted structure. We'll also do a fun demonstration using product images as documents. So our service works just as well on images, and we'll pull out information such as this grass-fed text or organic or USDA inspected from these different product labels and convert that into a nice structured table. So I'm going to lay the foundation so that you will understand what we're doing with those demonstrations. And the code for all of these is available in our GitHub. I'll show you where to access that as well. So starting with the introduction, agentic document extraction, fundamentally, it's an API service that's going to allow you to turn documents and images into structured information, and you're going to get both a Markdown and a JSON output. In that process, we're also enriching that document, and that's going to allow you to do custom RAG applications or structured field extraction from that output. A couple of the industries where we're getting a lot of traction. One is financial services. I already previewed some of those kind of loan documents, but there's a lot of things related to know your customer, financial statements, tax documents. So I'll let you just kind of absorb some of the information here. But I've been on phone calls where we're talking about like tens of millions of documents of this type from a large financial institution. Also getting a lot of traction with healthcare. There's a lot of paperwork in healthcare, whether it's patients that are bringing lab results or test results from other providers, whether it's advanced directives, prior authorizations, lots and lots of paperwork in healthcare, and a real need to accurately extract every detail from these documents. Also, shipping and logistics, lots of paperwork here. So whether it's a bill of lading for air or ocean transport, certificates of origin for the different products, customs declarations, every country, every shipping line, every manufacturer has slightly different document layouts. So being able to rationalize all of this paperwork. So those three examples, the financial services, healthcare, shipping, and logistics, are often interested in taking that large collection of documents and mapping it to a custom schema. So this will be actually the first demonstration that we do is taking similar documents that have similar information and how do we extract that in a structured way. But I do want to draw attention also to one-of-a-kind historical documents. So we're getting a lot of interest from archivists and people who are involved in library sciences. So there was a large effort to scan and digitize a lot of historical documents. And now we really have the capability to extract the details from those, both the printed text as well as kind of handwritten. So, of course, these are all one of a kind. You're not trying to map them to a standard schema, but I think you'll see that our service works well on these types of documents as well. So a couple of things to highlight. I think you'll see this in the demonstration as we go. So we are able to parse those raw documents. You'll see enrichment, especially for anything that's detected as a figure or a chart. I've already previewed field extraction. This will make more sense when you see it. And very importantly, we do offer enterprise security, and I'll make sure to show you our trust center where you can learn about everything from ZDR to GDPR. On the topic of kind of privacy and trust, we do have a version of our agentic document extraction that runs fully inside of Snowflake as a Snowflake native app. So what's nice about this is there is absolutely no data movement. None of your documents ever leave Snowflake. It integrates with Cortex Search, their agents, and their notebooks. So this is another option for privacy and security. All right, I'll introduce this acronym FATE, and then we'll be off into the demo. So fast, accurate, trusted, and economical. We are able to do hundreds or thousands of pages per minute, no template required, so fast to get started, fast to process. Our accuracy has been really excellent. I'm starting a lot of phone calls where people are saying, we've tried your service, we're finding it to be highly accurate on documents we've struggled with. So this is really just more market validation. Trusted, you'll see the visual grounding that like every extraction can be tied back to exactly where in the document that came from. And lastly, economical. So whether it's replacing manual processes or just, being able to improve your costs on document extraction you're already doing, I think you'll find this service quite economical. So acronym is FATE. And with that, let's get out of these slides and into the visual playground. So I am going to show you how to access the visual playground starting from the LandingAI website. So on our product dropdown, you'll see the first one here is Agentic Document Extraction. There's a lot of great information on this page, also an excellent video from Andrew Ng. But if you're itching to get started, you're going to click this white button to try it, and that's going to take you to our visual playground. If you don't already have an account, there'll be another step that you didn't see to create an account, and then you'll be into this experience. So we're going to drop a file anywhere to just follow the instructions here. And I'm going to use something that will hopefully be relatable to everyone in the audience. So we're going to take a look at this optometry prescription. The patient here is clearly customer sample, and they wear glasses, and this is their prescription. They also have requests for their lenses, so UV protection and anti-reflective. And you see that as I'm clicking around on this document, this is what we refer to as the visual grounding. So we're drawing bounding boxes on top of the different sections of this document that we've detected, and can see that there's tables, there are check boxes, there are just regular text blocks as well. All right, let's do a second one. And this is also a prescription for glasses, but looks very different, right? It's from Dr. Seymour Clearly, and there's some handwriting here. It is, clearly just laid out very differently from the first one. So we were talking earlier about different, customs declaration forms or invoices. All of these kind of have the same concept behind them, is that the the documents are laid out differently, but they fundamentally contain the same information. So once we have a document like this, you're seeing there's a Markdown response and there's a JSON response. And in the JSON response, you're getting the actual coordinates that go along with the box. And this is in relative units relative to the height and width of the overall document. And you're also getting this chunk identifier. So this particular chunk number 2, I guess, has this unique identifier. And when you use the API, you can actually save this chunk as a PNG with this name. So you'd be able to display it like in a RAG application, actually display it for visual verification. Okay, so this is very nicely formatted JSON, but it does follow the structure of the document, right? It's like chunk 1, chunk 2, chunk 3. And what you probably actually want out of this is more structured information about like what is the prescription and what is the lens design. So I've clicked from parse over to extract, and this is what we call our field extraction. So there's a couple different ways to interact with this. I'm going to click here to start with suggestions. And this is actually going to dynamically create a schema based on the information that's been detected in this document. So I'll look this over real quick and say, great, let's run this. So this automatic schema creation is really just a huge time savings. And it's going to allow you just to test a lot of things in the visual playground very quickly. So again, this was not my schema. This was the schema that the system suggested, and it looks pretty good. But say that I already have a schema, right? So I can also, I'll just start over here, clear and restart. And then from the 3 dots up here, I can actually upload my own schema. So you're going to see my messy file system here, but we'll find our optometry.json. So this is a schema that I've prepared in advance. You saw it briefly there in the center. And now I have the extracted results in the schema that I have provided. So typically what you're going to want to do is iterate a little bit to get the schema that you want, and then try it on a few different documents. So here's my other prescription. I'll upload that same schema. And my goal is to test out maybe 5 to 10 variants and see that my schema is accurately extracting the information across all those different variants. So that is really the introduction to the visual playground and how to use it. We also offer a chat feature, which is really just here for a preview. So this kind of chat functionality is not part of our API service, but is going to allow you to experiment with like what would this look like if we turned it into a retrieval augmented generation system, and show you really how that visual grounding goes along with the answer to the question. So we've got parse, extract, and chat as kind of the key parts of the visual playground. You'll also want to explore the things that are available down here under your little person icon. So this is where you'll get your API key and also connect to documentation and the community. Let's look at some completed examples. So I have a whole bunch of different tabs open here, and we'll go through some completed examples. So this first section I called core because these are really the use cases that we're seeing the most of at the moment. So here's an invoice, right? Every business deals with invoices. Whether you're a product company, a service company, you're dealing with invoices. And so being able to accurately extract these and be able to turn this into structured information is probably the #1 use case that we're seeing right now. So #1 would be invoices. Then I've got two examples kind of from the realm of finance. So if you're in the US, you may recognize this W-2 statement. So this is a tax form that we receive at the end of the year from our employer that shows kind of all of our earnings throughout the year, as well as deductions and other programs. So a very common type of document, but they do actually occur in different visual formats. And here would be a personal financial statement. So again, this might be the type of thing that I have to provide when I apply for a home loan to show like my account balances in my investment statement. And typically, what the receiving organization is going to do with this is make sure that the name actually matches my name, check that the date is current. You know, this is a sample, so it's not current, and then be able to extract the ending or the current account balance. So we're seeing a lot of these personal financial documents, which of course require very high security. Another thing that requires high security are these personal medical files. So this might be, a blood sample report that you've, received from one lab, and now you're taking it to an expert for a second opinion, right? And so you're physically bringing this paperwork from the lab to the new doctor that you're about to see. And their ability to actually ingest this and then make it part of your medical record requires this accurate structured extraction. Another example might be advanced directives or scope of treatment, right? So here's another example with checkbox extraction where, these checkboxes are life and death here, right? So this person does want, critical care interventions, including CPR and intubation, right? They've checked number 2. And you can actually go through and verify here, this person does not want blood products, but they do want nutritional support. So it's a great example of, if this was your document, you would want to make sure that it was being understood correctly to understand your wishes. And lastly, some examples from shipping and transportation. So here's I think this is an ocean shipping log, right? So we've got the origins and the destination. We've got the contents, the signature line. So and an example here, certificate of origin. So I believe this one is, yeah, from issued by China. We've got some footwear being shipped here from Seoul Technology Inc., right? And we've got, extractions of all of the different fields on this form. So again, I'm calling these kind of the core use cases: invoices, financial services, healthcare, shipping, and logistics. But we're seeing a lot more than just that. Um, just to kind of emphasize the zero-shot parsing of more difficult layouts, I'll show you just a little bit of complexity. So what's complex about this one? So the main portion of the document here has this 3-column layout, but then it's interrupted by this figure and the caption, right? So traditional OCR really struggles with something like this to understand that there are 3 columns, but you shouldn't read across the text right here. So a lot of traditional OCR would say the lack of effect of figure 1, 500 milligrams, and it would just read directly across here. So we do have our own proprietary technology that first detects the layout of the document and understands the human reading structure. So this is chunk 10 followed by chunk 11. I guess, yeah, then it's interrupted by this figure and then continues with 14. Um, and in this example, I also like this table. The table looks deceptively easy, but the shading here is actually misleading. So if you look at what's actually being reported here, this first gray shaded row says number of trials 29, and then that's actually subdivided between this 23 and 6. So the first 3 rows actually go together. And that is actually understood correctly in the extraction over here, that for outcome number 1, the first 3 rows are kept together, and this 29 is subdivided into 23 and 6. So definitely try our service on some of your more challenging tables. We've really made a lot of improvements on table extraction. This might be my favorite document of all time. It's also one of our first kind of multi-page documents. I've been showing a lot of one-pagers. So this one is 18 pages long. I'll just kind of tab through it. But one of the things that strikes me about this document is just the sheer variety of charts that this author has used. So there are bar charts and line charts and Porter's five forces, and everything in between. So this is a nice example of it would be very difficult to find one service that actually can handle all of these different chart types. So I'm just going to click on some of the figures, let you kind of absorb those extractions. But we are able to deal with lots and lots of different chart types. And this document is my absolute favorite in terms of showing so many different charts all in one document. All right, I could click through this one forever. Um, this one is worth pointing out because the figure analysis isn't just for tables, but it isn't just for, I guess, like bar charts and other figures. You'll also find a figure type used for this kind of photography. And if I click on some of these photographs, I'm not going to read you these figure analyses, but I do want to draw attention to the fact that these figures actually have really small black arrows on them that are pointing to particular features in the photograph. You might be able to see the black arrows behind where I'm mousing. And in the extraction, it will even tell you what the arrows are pointing at. So the arrows direct attention to possible changes in tissue density, structure, or pathology in the ethmoid, sinuses, or adjacent nasal cavity. So you're getting much more than like this is a photograph with, a left panel and a right panel. You're actually getting a true analysis of this image. And last example, just for fun, we've got our local IKEA. I've got a lot of IKEA booklets laying around. And this is another example with figure analysis, like really understanding like what does the figure mean, right? So I'm focused on the center one here. And it says the illustration visually instructs users to always assemble objects on a protective surface to prevent damage and not directly on hardwood floors. And that is exactly what this figure is trying to convey. So this type of document that has very little text, which allows them to be such a huge international player, you can actually then extract the meaning of these figures. Okay. I'm going to show a few archival examples and we'll do a first round of questions. So Adrian, you can start to queue up if there's any good questions coming in. So this is an example that I think we actually put out on our YouTube for 4th of July. So this is a historical document. Um, and worth pointing out that, even like handwritten text like this, New York City is well extracted. And it's also a place where you can preview the extraction on damaged portions of the document. So here you can see like this is kind of smeared and very blurry. And if you actually pause the video and compare them side by side, the extraction is pretty good. At some point, the blur gets too bad to deal with. Here's another example of some damage on the document, but these names like Reginald Bolton in the second row here are actually extracted correctly. So example of historical documents with some damage. Example of a historical document with lots of handwriting. Examples of historical documents that have kind of tables. So this is a property record from 1810 to 1919. and example of not just a historical document, but also a very blurry document. So there oftentimes is not an ability to go back to the original to capture higher resolution. So this one is challenging both for the handwriting and for the quality of the scan originally. But we are getting, the personal information correct. Here, the occupation is farmer, which you can see over here, and the names of the parents. So rather challenging document for a variety of reasons. All right, let me pause there. I'll just put up one of these core examples while we take some questions.
First question, is there a way to extract a photograph or a figure image to your schema, or do you have plans to offer it?
I'm not sure if I'm interpreting this correctly. So you're saying in the photograph, there is some structured information, and that's what you want to pull into the schema? Maybe you can rephrase that, or Adrian, how do you interpret the question?
It would probably be helpful if that particular user could rephrase that question. We can go on to the next question. Can you extract handwritten signatures also?
Yes.
Great. Next question. Let's see. Okay, here it is. Here's explanation. There is a page with your pictures. I want to pull the pictures into a schema. Does that give better clarification to the original
Yeah,
question?
actually, I think the food label demonstration is actually going to be really helpful with that because these are images, right? And we're going to be pulling some of the text from these images. So maybe like the first question in that one, see if you still have that question after we do the food demonstration.
And then to the user questions around signups, plans, and pricing. Everything's on the website, and we will make sure that those links are in there. And I'll actually put them here now. Um, and if you want to go ahead and continue, I'll continue to because we're getting a lot more questions. So if you want to continue.
Okay. Um, yeah, so let's kind of shift gears a little bit. We'll talk about the trust center and the documentation. We'll come back and look at this food label example, and then we'll shift into some code. So let's start with the trust center. So the page that I have open here, security at LandingAI, is available from these footer links. So if you're on our main website, come down to the footer, and that's where you're going to find security and compliance and trust center. So a couple things to point out here. This will go through all of our compliance frameworks. We are SOC 2 and HIPAA compliant currently, and some of these EU-specific certifications are coming soon, so definitely check back on this page. There's more information about overall product security, and probably the number one question we get is like, what do you do with our documents? And we do have this option for zero data retention. With this option, data is processed in memory and is never stored by us or our sub-processors. So the documents are used exclusively for the extraction process and immediately discarded. So this zero data retention is typically what the organizations with like the financial documents, the healthcare documents, they're opting for this option, but you can read more about it on this page. Also in the footer is a link to this trust center. This is going to give you lots more details, also a place where you can request copies of any of our audited reports. So all of those are available from the footer links. Then in terms of where to get help with the service, okay, so we'll start here with the documentation. So there's a little like pages link in the corner. So that'll take you through to docs.landing.ai. We do have other services that LandingAI offers. And so if you wind up in the documentation section for Landing Lens, for example, I'll just switch back to Agentic Document Extraction. There's a lot of great information here, quick starts, how to set your API key, some parsing basics, how do you access documents that are, in S3, Google Drive, and other places. I will point out on this homepage that the REST API and the Python library are two different ways to interact programmatically with the service. So the REST API, you can make a curl request like in Terminal, JavaScript, and Python. And so this page will help you configure those requests to get started the first time. But I would highly, highly steer you toward the Python library. It has many advantages over working with the REST API directly. So if you click on this tile, you'll be taken to this page on GitHub, which will highlight some of the benefits of the Python library. So it is kind of all batteries included. You just need to install one package. And some of the benefits here is that it's going to auto split and parallel process large PDFs. So the REST API is not capable of doing this. So you're going to get much faster responses on long documents because we will parallelize it and then put it all back together for you. Also with the Python library, you're going to have automatic retries and higher rate limits. So it's kind of just much more resilient, and you don't have to write a lot of your own exception handling. So lots of great information here about how to get started and basic usage and code snippets. Um, Also from the visual playground, you may have seen like from your person icon down here, you can access the GitHub community. Sorry, not not GitHub community, GitHub repo, Discord community. So this purple thing is the Discord icon. And when you click on that, you will be taken through to Discord. You're going to and we have a wonderful developer relations specialist, Ankit, who manages our Discord community. So once you're inside, you'll be kind of on this green icon for the landing lens. On the Start Here page, you're going to see this post. So, start by introducing yourself, tell us who you are. If you need help, we do have a bot channel that has been trained on all of our documentation that may be able to give you kind of the fastest, quickest help. Of course, we also have human help. So there's a channel for that for Ask Away and a place to open a ticket for one-on-one support. I would definitely encourage you to spend some time in here. Like if you come in to Ask Away, you will actually learn a lot from other people's questions and other people's code snippets. And Ankit will know if the question has been already asked and answered somewhere else and can help direct you to that. So definitely encourage you to get started with the Discord. And so this is our official Python library. And then we also have a place where we publish other helpful scripts. So we'll send this in the follow-up, but the demos I'm going to show in this webinar are here in helper scripts. So consider this like unofficial scripts. So it's separate from our official Python library, but all of these worked as of last week and they're working as of today. So this is the one that we're going to do with the product images. This is the one we're going to do with the financial documents. I just uploaded this one yesterday. Some of them will also have videos associated with them. So lots of resources for getting started. Okay. I realize this keeps showing my schedule in between. So now you know what I'm doing after this. Um, okay, I'm going to do just a quick detour on languages, and then we're going to get into the code-based demos. So we are receiving a lot of phone calls from all over the world. I've spoken to people in Lebanon, in Switzerland, in New Zealand, and in many cases, a French company just yesterday, actually. In many cases, they're telling us that the extractions in languages other than English are really excellent and far superior to what they're getting with other services. So other than English, I only speak German. So many of these, it's hard for me to visually compare the accuracy. But for those of you who do speak any of these other languages, I'll let you just kind of visually absorb the information. So if you're connected today from someplace other than an English-speaking country, definitely try your documents with our service. Here's the only one in the batch I can understand, so it's a handwritten German. And I think my last example here, yeah, oh yeah, this is other than that equity report, this is my other favorite example. This package, I think, has like no less than like 7 languages on it. So here's this recipe section, the nutrition information, which has a lot of different languages mixed together, the ingredients, which are posted in multiple languages, and I think these might be some, yeah, manufacturing information, right? So this might be like my all-time favorite example, just because it's a difficult document, but it also has so many different languages in it. And it's a good segue into our food label demo. So I'm just going to visually show you the pictures we're going to be working with, and then we're going to switch over to some code. So as you look at these pictures, there's different certifications on here, like certified grass-fed, certified humane, certified regenerative. Where have we got on this one? What's non-GMO down here in the picture. Here we've got, animal welfare certified in the picture, grass-fed in the text. So we want to try to extract kind of structured nutritional information from these different images. So let's switch over to VS Code and do that. Okay, so I'm going to show you some of this happening in real time. Well, so this particular notebook is this field extraction notebook. I also have a completed version of it just in case I had like internet difficulties. But we've got an input folder that has 6 different images, and these are the ones that I just showed you larger in the playground. So we're going to read all of the images in this folder. So rather than processing one document at a time, we're going to process this as a batch of 6, and then we're going to take a look at the outputs. So this notebook is available on GitHub in that helper scripts area. And I'm just going to clear all the outputs and we'll restart the kernel. So we're starting with a blank slate here. Okay, import statement. So uses very little other than our agentic doc library. So we're going to import parse. I have set my API key in advance, so you'll want to check that this line is printed correctly. Otherwise, there's a lot of help for setting your API key. Okay, I'm going to tell it I want to use the input folder that I just showed you. I want to create these other folders if they don't already exist. So now I have some blank folders to hold my results. All right, let's collect the documents. So 6 different documents. And now we're going to run the agentic document extraction. This version does not use field extraction. So I'm going to say I want to use parse. I'm going to send all the documents in my file path, which were these 6. And I want to save the results to the results folder and the groundings to the groundings folder. So we can start to see that happening as that executes. All right, so 19 seconds looks like we're done. So here we now have a JSON response for each one of the products, and this is going to correspond to what we saw in the visual playground. And then the groundings are going to give us the individual pieces of that different figure. So if I make this bigger, these are now our visual groundings that each have a chunk ID, which is going to allow us to visually verify any of the extractions. So in the visual playground, we got those boxes overlaid, and now hopefully this makes more sense of what you actually do with those boxes to be able to save that information. Okay, let's keep going with the notebook. So now we're going to actually define our custom schema. So we want to extract things like the product name and the brand, but really we're interested in this long list of nutrition claims. And all of these are set up as Booleans, so they're all going to be true or false. So you can use whatever you want as your kind of field name. The important part here really is that you have a good description. So sometimes you will need to iterate on the description until you get back exactly what you want. Right? So true if label mentions organic or includes the USDA organic seal. So I'm going to define my schema. I've called it product up here. And now I'm going to rerun Agentic Document Extraction with that extraction model schema. So this is the only line that's new. I actually removed all of the other lines just for clarity's sake. This is going to process all the documents a second time. So if I knew I wanted the extraction, I would have just done it once. There's no real reason to send the documents twice. Oh, okay. Not defined. That makes sense because I never executed this. Okay, so API key is valid. It is now sending all 6 documents again, which again is not necessary. I could have just done this the first time. So while that's running, I have one of the extractions just open here in another tab so you can see kind of what it looks like. So there is the markdown portion and then all of the individual chunks. So this was the force of nature beef. So you saw these on my file system, but that's just what one of them looks like. Okay, so we got about double the time because there's about double the work happening here. So in addition to the parsing, we're now running the field extraction on top of that. So I can view these results. So I've got 6 results because I did a batch of 6. It's going to start with the markdown output, and then the field extractions are going to be over here at the end. So let me find a couple. So yeah, here. So no hormones, no animal byproducts, USDA inspected, right? So that information is at the end of this very long response. So there's a couple of fields here to help you understand kind of what all is in the response. Here I'm just choosing one of the 6 documents, and that's going to allow us to unpack it a little bit more. So I've called that one document just doc. So now I've got doc.markdown, doc.chunks, right, to pull out the markdown and the chunk content. And then I can print a few things to screen. Right? So this will say, okay, this was an image. We found 4 chunks in this image. Here are the 4 chunks that were found, right? So this is really just helping you understand everything that's in this long response rather than trying to scroll through it horizontally. So here's the extractions that we asked for, starting with product name, brand, weight. Here's the metadata that goes with those extractions. So the product name comes from this chunk reference, the brand comes from that chunk reference. And then, of course, we can pull out any one item, pull out the reference associated with that. Each one of these chunks then can be related back to the original document. So if you wanted to verify this, you can say, okay, this came from page 0, right? These are all one-page documents, and here are the coordinates for that chunk. A little bit of just printing things to screen, right? If you want to create sentences out of this, you can access specific fields, right? So the product claims to be non-GMO true. This is extracted from a particular chunk. But all of that really is the lead up to mostly you probably just want it as a table. So here I'm defining exactly what I want my table to contain using pandas and parsing all of that JSON into a nice clean table. And typically, this would be what the output that people want. You can, of course, also write it to Excel, everybody's favorite data science standard. And this is what it will look like in Excel. So there were a couple questions asked about converting getting structured information out of images. So hopefully this was similar to what you had in mind, kind of starting with these images, but pulling out structured information. So let me pause for another round of questions, and then we have one more code-based demo.
Great. First question, can we use Poplar in Python?
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, we'll take
Yeah,
that
sorry.
offline.
Yeah.
Um, do we have a compliance roadmap for NIST, a FedRAMP?
Um, I wouldn't know the answer to that on the fly. Yeah, check the Trust Center or email us that question.
We'll take that offline as
Yeah.
well. Let's see. We have some documents that capture PCB board design. We are trying to extract signal path information from PC board. Do you have any customers who use your component for such a purpose? If not, would we be able to customize and improve extraction capabilities of your implementation with custom agents for extracting specialized information from documents?
Ah, there's a lot in there. So I know that we are having companies use our agentic document extraction just to read serial numbers, right? So if you're asking about like scanning electron microscope, like there's also like a barcode or a serial number that needs to be read. Like I know we have some use cases with that. Um, the other part of the question, I think, was more about like fine-tuning or customization. That may or may not be possible. There's, we're going to have a conversation about that. Sorry.
And keep in mind, everyone posting questions, we will do follow-ups on those questions. So
Yeah.
no worries about that. Let me go to the next question. Let's see. How does this do for chemical data? For example, extracting chemical route and conditions into categories.
Um, I mean, as long as the starting document is clear, right? It's not crinkled or damaged, like there's no reason to think it wouldn't do well. So part of me showing such a diversity of examples is to say it's probably going to work on your document as well. Um, you know, somebody somewhere is going to prove me wrong on that and say it didn't work on mine. But if the document is clear, it should work quite well.
Do we have time for another question before you jump into
Yeah,
the
sure.
demo?
Yeah, do one
Okay.
more and then I'll set up for the next demo.
How to categorize document types, invoice from different vendors from different layouts. Or, I'm sorry, how to categorize document type, invoices from different vendors who have different layouts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so there are potentially two parts to the question there. So like document type is actually something that we're addressing on our roadmap. So like, is this an invoice or is this like a financial statement? Because depending on what the document type is, you may want to apply a different schema to it. So that is actually on the roadmap. The part about different layouts, maybe you weren't able to join the beginning of the session, but the reason we went through those optometry examples was really to emphasize the variation in the layout. And also these food examples really emphasize variation in the layout. So absolutely no problem with varied layouts and then being able to find like where in the invoice that information is coming from.
Did you want to jump into the demo now, or do you want to take one more question?
Yeah. Let me jump into the other demo. So this one is also code based, but it has a user interface to it. So this is the script that you're going to see me run, app2.py. It is a Streamlit application, and it's going to run locally on my system. So this is an Agentic Doc sample app. So let's go ahead and bring this up, and we'll do Streamlit run, and we'll run it. Okay. So this demonstration also processes everything that's in a folder as a batch, but it provides a simple user interface to interact with the API for a non-technical user. So Whereas the actual raw code might be quite intimidating for, somebody who's a loan processor. A simple UI that you can build in well, you can just steal this one from me, right? Will allow you to start interacting with the API. So what we're going to do is point to this document selection at a particular path. So we're going to point it at this folder, and we're going to extract everything in this folder. So I'm just going to do /webinar right there and hit this button. And now I wanted you to actually be able to see the processing happening. There we go. So this is now running in my terminal, right? It says found 4 documents, and it's sending them for Agentic Document Extraction. And here in the foreground, we can see that it's created a results folder, and it's starting to drop things into the results folder. So the user is basically just waiting at this point, right? Like they're not actually seeing any of this happen. But it's nice to show it happening in real time. So, and then the user gets this success message. So I found 4 documents. All of the outputs have been saved to either results or groundings. And you saw that happen in real time. So here in results, I have a JSON and a markdown for each of the original 4 documents. And I've got the groundings. Many of these are just one-page documents, so they look like this. But the account statement actually has many pages to it, and so then the groundings are actually grouped this way. So on page 4, these are all the chunks that were found. So this particular demonstration is really just about like processing like everything that I supplied as part of my loan application. Built a couple other like bells and whistles in here to show what's possible. So on the like about this app, it'll tell you a little bit more about how this works. And then the app actually will also show you the JSON responses. So there's 4 tabs here because it found 4 documents. So these are dynamically created and allows the person just to see the JSON response for each document. This tab also dynamically creates these 4 subsections, which is a place where you can now like see the overlay of the visual grounding on top of the document. So these are really just there for verification and to show the capabilities of the Python package. They're not really central to the use case itself. But if we go back to the code, so all of this is coming from here, right? It's got a simple like reset button so that you can process the next folder. But everything in here really revolves around this statement. So this is where we're doing the batch parsing, and this is exactly what you saw in the previous demonstration. So I'm gathering everything that's in one folder, sending it to Agentic Document Extraction, and then saving the results that I get back. Most of everything else in here is actually then running the visual display to put like a nice front end on it. But it's a good example of going quickly from a notebook to a simple front end that any user would be able to just reset this, and then they would type in the next folder here, and they'd be able to run all of their extractions kind of folder by folder. I shouldn't try to type while I'm talking. So, so that was the second demonstration. Again, I'll show you where to get these helper scripts, and then we've got about 5 minutes for questions. So in helper scripts, agentic document extraction, the 2 that we just ran through are this field extraction demo. This is the product images. And I actually included the exact same pictures here if you want to try it. And then in this Streamlit application batch processing, this will work for any type of documents, right? So I happen to give it financial documents, but you could give it healthcare documents, transportation documents, somebody asked about chemicals. So this is a completely generic application that will just extract whatever you put in that folder. It doesn't have to be financial services specific in any way. All right. I'm going to stop sharing there. We can take a question or two and
Yes.
call it a day.
What if I'm interested in extracting data from a document that your tool may not be trained on? Example, 1099-B tax-related documents. Also, what if I'm interested in only certain data elements, e.g. stock transactions with multi-page documents consisting of pages that I'm not interested in, such as T's and C's, notes, help text, etc.? Can I specify the tool to ignore irrelevant data and give me only what I need?
Okay, so I'm going to break that into two parts. So one is like, will it work for my document that was not in your training set? Um, almost, almost certainly yes. Our approach to this is completely layout agnostic. Our foundations as a company are in computer vision. So one of the reasons our technology performs really well, zero shot, is that rather than thinking of a document as text that has a layout to it, we're thinking about it as a picture that happens to have some text somewhere in the picture. And so the deep learning techniques coming from computer vision are just like a fundamentally different approach than how most people are dealing with document extraction. So just try your documents, you'll probably get a pretty good extraction. The second part of the question of like, can you ignore parts of this long document that I'm not interested in? We get this question all the time, and it's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing because, like, you know that you're not interested in pages 90 to 99, but you only know that because you looked at pages 90 to 99, right? So there has to be some sort of pre-screening somehow to say, like, these are the irrelevant pages, they don't need to be sent. So it is like this chicken and egg question where people say like, I want to ignore these pages, and then I'll call them on it, say like, you only know that because you looked at those pages. And so either a person or a system still has to look at those pages to decide that they're irrelevant for the extraction.
In the event that the model does not perform adequately for a particular use case, is there an option to fine tune it on proprietary data?
Um, so I don't want to like publicly offer this to everyone, but if you are running like 10 million plus documents and we're not hitting your accuracy, then we would want to talk to you about fine tuning. So there's no fine tuning for anything other than very large enterprise clients. But for those, we would definitely want to understand where you're experiencing errors.
And with that, we're going to conclude. Thank you. Everyone have a great rest of the week.